You saw that spider stretched across the corner of your tomato plants this morning. Your first instinct was to grab a shoe. Stop. That spider is the reason your garden is still standing. I killed them for years. Hundreds of them. And every single time I did, I was quietly sabotaging the very thing I was trying to protect. Here is the truth that took me nearly a decade and hundreds of wasted dollars to understand. The spiders in your garden are doing more pest control in one night than a whole shelf of sprays could do in a season, and they do it for free. I did it the wrong way for so long. I sprayed, I squashed. I bought every bottle with a bright label promising a bug-free yard, and my garden kept getting worse. It was a study from the University of Tennessee, published back in 1990, that finally cracked it open for me. Stay with me, because near the end I am going to hand you the exact refuge trick that researcher discovered, and it works in the yard you already have, this weekend, with things sitting in your shed right now. Let me take you back to the summer I remember most clearly. It was late July, the year my green beans got shredded down to lace by leaf-eating beetles. I stood there with a hose-end sprayer in one hand and a dead spider under my boot, and I honestly could not understand why nothing was working. I thought I was winning, I was losing, and the thing I was killing was the only ally I had left. So let me tell you exactly how deep my mistake went, because if you are anything like I was, you have been told your whole life that a good gardener keeps a clean, bug-free yard. That is the lie I believed. I thought every crawling thing was an enemy. I thought a spider web across my pepper plants was a sign of neglect, something to sweep away so the garden looked tidy and cared for. Nobody ever sat me down and explained the difference between the pests that eat your plants and the predators that eat the pests. To me, they were all just bugs, and bugs were bad. I remember the first spring I got serious about it. I walked into the garden center and I spent nearly $60 in one trip. 2 bottles of concentrate, a bag of granules, and a little pump sprayer with a cracked handle that I overpaid for. The man behind the counter nodded like I was doing the responsible thing. I felt like a real gardener that day. I went home and I coated everything. And for about 2 weeks, it looked like it worked. The bugs disappeared, the webs were gone. The yard looked clean. Then came the 3rd week. The aphids came back, but this time there was nothing to stop them. No ladybugs, no little predators, no spiders sitting patiently in the corners waiting for dinner. I had wiped out everything, the good and the bad, and the pests came roaring back faster than anything else, because pests always breed faster than the things that eat them. So I sprayed again, and again. I was on a treadmill and I did not even know it. Every bottle I bought created the exact problem that made me buy the next bottle. Here is the part that still stings when I think about it. I was not just wasting money. I was making my garden weaker every single season. The more I sprayed, the more dependent my garden became on me spraying. I had turned a living system that used to balance itself into a patient on life support, and I was the one holding the plug. But the moment everything changed for me was not in a store. It was in a stack of research I stumbled into one winter when my garden was dead and I had nothing to do but read about why I kept failing. That is when I found the numbers. And once you hear these numbers, I promise you will never look at a spider the same way again. There are 2 scientists whose names I want you to remember, because their work is the reason my garden turned around. Martin Nyffeler and Klaus Birkhofer. In 2017, they published a study in a journal called The Science of Nature, and they set out to answer a question nobody had ever really put a hard number on. How much do the world's spiders actually eat? The answer stopped me cold. They estimated that the spiders on planet Earth consume somewhere between 400 million and 800 million tons of insects and other prey every single year. Let me put that in a way that actually lands. That is more meat, more living prey than the entire human population eats in meat and fish combined in a year. All of it done silently, by creatures most of us step on without a second thought. Now bring that down to the size of your own backyard. A single average spider eats around 2,000 insects in a year. Think about that. Just one. If you have even a dozen spiders quietly living around your vegetable beds, you are looking at more than 20,000 pests removed in a season, and you did not lift a finger or spend a dime. When I squashed a spider, I was not killing one bug. I was firing an entire pest control crew that would have worked for me, unpaid, every night, in the dark, while I slept. And here is what really got me. Spiders do not just eat one kind of insect. Unlike a pesticide that targets a narrow group, a spider will take aphids, caterpillars, beetles, flies, grasshoppers, moths, whatever wanders into its space. They are what scientists call generalist predators. That word matters, and I will come back to why, because it turns out to be the exact reason they outperform the chemicals I was buying. Let me explain how a spider actually protects a plant, because understanding this is what finally made me stop reaching for the shoe. Most people think a spider only helps when it catches and eats a bug. That is only half the story. The bigger half is fear. When pest insects sense spiders nearby, through vibrations, through silk threads, through simple presence, they change their behavior. They eat less. They move less. They lay fewer eggs. Researchers have measured this. Plants and gardens with spiders suffer less damage even from the pests the spiders never actually catch, simply because the pests are too nervous to feast. A spider protects your tomatoes just by standing guard. I had spent years removing my guards and wondering why the enemy kept walking straight in. But knowing spiders were valuable only raised a harder question for me. And it is the question that kept me up at night once I understood the scale of my mistake. If these creatures are this powerful, this free, this effective, then how on earth did I grow up believing the exact opposite? How did an entire generation of us come to see our best friend in the garden as something to fear and destroy? Because that did not happen by accident. Somebody profited from me not knowing this. Let me tell you what I found when I started pulling on that thread, because this is where I stopped feeling foolish and started feeling angry. For most of human history, people understood that a garden was a living community. If you read the old agricultural writing, the household manuals and farming almanacs from the 1800s and before, spiders and their webs were often seen as a good sign. A barn full of webs meant fewer flies on the livestock. A garden with spiders meant fewer pests on the crops. Farmers were not squeamish. They lived close enough to the land to notice what actually helped them. There was even a long folk tradition across Europe and early America that killing a house spider brought bad luck. And while that sounds like superstition, look closely, and you will see it was practical wisdom dressed up in a warning. It kept people from destroying something useful. So what changed? The turning point came in the middle of the 20th century. After the Second World War, there was a massive industrial capacity built up for producing chemicals, and much of it got turned toward agriculture and the home. Suddenly, there were powerful new synthetic pesticides on the market, and an entire advertising machine was built to sell them. And here is the trick they pulled, the one that got me and probably got you too. To sell a spray that kills every bug, you first have to convince people that every bug is the enemy. Think about the picture they sold us. The perfect lawn, the spotless garden, not a web in sight, not a crawling thing anywhere. Everything clean and controlled and dead. That image did not come from nature. Nature is never that clean. That image was manufactured, printed in magazines, and shown in advertisements because a person who is afraid of every insect is a person who buys product season after season, forever. They did not just sell me poison. They sold me a definition of a good garden that required the poison. And I bought both. The cruelest part is what the chemicals actually did once they were in my yard. Remember I told you spiders are generalist predators? Here is why that matters so much. When you spray a broad pesticide, you kill the fast-breeding pests, yes, but you also kill the slow-breeding predators, like spiders. The pests bounce back in weeks because they reproduce like wildfire. The spiders take far longer to recover, sometimes a full season or more. So every time I sprayed, I tilted the balance further toward the pests and further away from my own defenders. I was breeding a garden that needed me to keep buying poison. The product created the disease it claimed to cure. I want you to sit with the money for a second, because this is the number that actually made me put the sprayer down for good. I added it up one winter. Between the concentrates, the granules, the sprayers I kept replacing, and the plants I lost and had to buy again, I was spending well over $100 a year fighting a war I was making worse. Over the roughly 9 years I did it, that is close to $1,000 spent to systematically destroy the free workforce that would have solved the problem for nothing. $1,000 to make my garden weaker. I could have done nothing at all and come out ahead. I want to pause here for just a moment, because what I just described, that treadmill of spraying and spending and making everything worse, is exactly the kind of buried, costly mistake I wrote about in detail in one of my books. If you want to go deeper than any single video can take you, I have put the most important of these recovered methods into 3 books: First Fixes, Deep Leverage, and The Full Stack. Each one is a practical, no-nonsense guide built for people who are done being sold something and ready to understand how their garden actually works. You can find them linked in the description below, and I think you will recognize yourself on nearly every page. But knowing the numbers is only the beginning, so let me bring this back to your backyard and show you exactly what happened next. Now, maybe right about now you are thinking that this is all fine for someone starting a brand new garden from bare soil, but your yard is already established, already sprayed, already the way it is, and this cannot really apply to you. I thought the same thing. I was certain I had already ruined mine, that the balance was too far gone, that a garden as beaten up as mine could not just heal itself. So this next part is the part I built specifically for you, the person standing in a yard they think is already too far gone. Because I was wrong. And I want to show you exactly how I turned mine around with nothing but what I already owned. The first thing I did cost nothing, and it was simply to stop. I stopped spraying, completely. That was the hardest part, because when you stop, there is a period, usually a few weeks, where the pests come, and the predators have not yet arrived to eat them, and everything in you screams to grab the bottle. I call it the ugly window. You have to get through the ugly window. If you spray during it, you reset the whole thing to 0, and you are back on the treadmill. I white-knuckled through about 3 weeks of aphids that first year, and then one morning I saw the ladybugs. Then the tiny spiders in the bean leaves. The cavalry had arrived, and they had been waiting for me to get out of their way. The second thing I did was stop cleaning away the webs. This sounds too simple to matter, but it was a genuine shift for me. Every web across a plant is an active trap, working for you around the clock, catching flies and moths, and the very moths whose caterpillars would chew your leaves. I used to sweep them down because they looked messy. Now I see a web, and I feel relief. It means the system is working. Leave the webs. Every one you leave is a bug you do not have to fight. The third thing, and this one is free and immediate, is to give up on the idea of a perfectly clean garden floor. I used to rake every scrap of anything off the soil. Bare dirt, tidy and neat, just like the advertisements taught me. But bare soil is a desert for the creatures that protect you. Spiders need places to hide, to hunt from ambush, to shelter during the day. A little clutter at ground level, some leaves, a bit of low cover is not neglect. It is habitat. The tidiest gardens are often the most defenseless, and I had the tidiest, most defenseless garden on the block. Here's a small trick. You can do this very afternoon with zero cost. Take a few flat stones or a couple of old broken clay pots you have lying around and set them among your plants, tilted so there is a little dark gap underneath. That gap becomes a daytime shelter for ground spiders and beetles that hunt at night. I made 3 of these out of busted pots I was about to throw away, and within 2 weeks I had wolf spiders living under every one of them, coming out each night to patrol my beds. It cost me nothing but the 2 minutes it took to bend down and place them. And if you want proof this works on an existing, ordinary garden and not just in theory, that brings me to the discovery that changed everything for me, the one I promised you at the start. This is the finale, and it is the most powerful thing I know about gardening, so let me give it to you exactly the way I found it. Her name is Susan Riekert. She was a biologist at the University of Tennessee, and she spent her career studying spiders when almost nobody thought garden spiders were worth studying at all. In 1990, she and a colleague named Lawrence Bishop published a study in the journal Ecology that I consider one of the most important and most ignored pieces of practical gardening research ever done. And what makes it beautiful is that she did not test some exotic method. She tested whether ordinary spiders, encouraged in an ordinary vegetable garden, could actually protect the crops. She set up real garden plots, the kind you and I have, and she ran the experiment. Here is what she did, and here is the exact trick I want you to take away. In some of the plots, she added a simple layer of mulch and grass clippings on the soil surface. That is it. Cut grass and mulch, the stuff most of us bag up and haul to the curb. She did not import special insects. She did not spray anything. She just laid down that layer of organic cover to give the spiders a place to live, shelter from the heat, and a moist, sheltered ground floor to hunt across. The results are the reason I will never garden any other way again. The plots with that simple mulch layer supported dramatically higher numbers of spiders. And those plots, the ones crawling with spiders she had invited in with nothing but grass clippings, suffered far less pest damage to the vegetables than the bare, clean plots. In some of her measurements, the reduction in pest damage in the spider-rich plots was enormous, cutting the eaten and destroyed plants down to a fraction of what the unprotected plots lost. A layer of mulch, that was the whole secret. She proved that if you simply give spiders a home, they will do the pest control for you, and they will do it better than a bare, sprayed garden ever could. Let me tell you exactly how I put her discovery to work, because it is almost embarrassingly simple. In the fall, instead of stripping my garden bare and hauling everything away like I used to, I leave a layer of leaves and spent plant material on the beds through the winter. That leaf litter is where spiders lay their eggs and where the young ones shelter through the cold. It means that in early spring, when the first pests wake up and start looking for my seedlings, the spiders are already there waiting. Not arriving late, after the damage is done, the way they did back when I raked everything clean, already in position, fully staffed, before the enemy even arrives. Then in the growing season, I do exactly what Riekert did. I keep a layer of mulch and grass clippings across the soil between my plants. It holds moisture, it feeds the soil, and most importantly, it is a spider city. Every clipping, every leaf is a hiding spot and a hunting ground. I went from a bare, poisoned treadmill garden to a living one covered in quiet cover, and the difference in what survives to my table is night and day. That is the whole method. And notice what it does not require. No $60 trip to the store. No concentrate, no granules, no sprayer with a cracked handle. It uses the grass you already cut and the leaves that already fall. It is not a product. It is the removal of a product, and the return of something that was working just fine for thousands of years before anyone sold us a bottle and told us to be afraid. I think about that late July afternoon a lot, the one where I stood over a dead spider with a ruined bean patch and a sprayer in my hand, absolutely certain I was doing the right thing. I was as wrong as a person can be. The thing under my boot was the answer. The thing in my hand was the problem. And the only reason I could not tell the difference was that somebody somewhere had made a great deal of money teaching me to see it backwards. So here is what I want you to carry away from this, and it is not really about spiders at all. What I recovered was not a gardening trick. It was the ability to trust what my own eyes and my own land were telling me, instead of what a bright label wanted me to believe. That web in the corner of your tomatoes is not a sign that you have failed. It is a sign that your garden is finally healing itself, the way it always knew how, if we would just get out of the way and let it. You are the kind of person who would rather understand how something actually works than keep paying to be kept in the dark. You would rather have a garden that defends itself than one that depends on your wallet. That is not old-fashioned. That is just sense. The kind that got buried under a mountain of advertising, and the kind that is worth digging back up and handing to the people you love. So, let me ask you something specific, and I really do want you to answer this one. When you go back out to your garden, are you going to leave that next web alone? And have you ever squashed a spider you now wish you had let live? Tell me in the comments. I read them. And I want to hear the story of the one that got away. While you are down there, let me know where you are watching from, because I am always amazed at how far these old bits of common sense travel. And if any part of this made you rethink something you have been doing for years, come join us. This channel is a place for people who are quietly recovering the practical, proven knowledge that convenience and marketing pushed aside, one buried method at a time. Subscribe and stay with me, because the next thing I am digging into is a simple, almost forgotten way our grandparents kept pests off their stored vegetables all winter long, using nothing but a single common item most of us throw straight into the trash. You will not believe how long it lasts. I did it the wrong, wasteful way for years too, and I cannot wait to show you what finally worked. You stayed till the end, so I'm still here with you. This video was the overview, but inside the Old Ways Almanac, I pick up right where we stopped. Ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. No bots. Thousands of Old Ways folks just like you are already in there with me. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime. One click, no risk.